Hey friends, we're back with another video on The Devil All the Time, Netflix's new gothic horror film that gave us goosebumps the whole time. In a film like this, you never know what the next eerie moment will be that makes you shudder, and there are many unbelievable moments throughout the story. Yes friends, today we'll be breaking down the most shocking moments from The Devil All the Time. If you need some context on the movie, check out our other video that provides a backstory, character breakdown, and explains the ending. And, as usual, this video contains spoilers about the film, so if you haven't yet watched the creepy, cunning, sinful ways of these characters, do not proceed. When we first heard the word knock 'em stiff, we thought it was maybe a carnival game or a tailgating term. Nope, it's a town in Ohio where Arvin Russell spends the first part of his childhood. Well, very early on, in order to set the stage for why his father, Willard Russell, is the way he is, we are taken on a flashback to his days fighting in World War II. Now, friends, whenever something has to do with war, we do get a little uneasy considering there are some horrendous things that take place in combat. But we were not at all ready for what came next. Willard and his comrades approach Sergeant Miller Jones, only recognizable by his dog tags. Jones has literally been crucified to a cross-shaped stake, bloody and rotting with flies swarming around him. Think that's the worst part? Well, as Willard slowly approaches, we see Jones suddenly seize up, and we realize that he's in fact alive. We jumped out of our seats at this moment, and Willard has to carry out the harrowing task of putting him out of his misery by shooting Jones in the head. Okay, so on his way back to seeing his family when he's back from the war, he meets Charlotte, his future wife, and falls in love with her. When he makes it back to his family, though, his mom has another girl in mind for him. Well, Willard isn't really one for praying, but he humors his mother and goes to a church with her in order to meet the girl. Well, no one really has time to even focus on whether or not Helen and Willard are getting along because, well, enter preacher Roy Lafferty. The man is actually insane. He's about to deliver a guest sermon, and friends, what follows makes absolutely zero sense. He continues to speak with fervor, arriving to the end of his sermon where he talks about the fact that God takes away his fears, like his fear of spiders. Okay, that part made sense, but why? Why did he have to open that jar of large black spiders and pour them onto his face just to prove his point? He legitimately lets them crawl down his face, neck, and body to prove his point. Side note, as someone who has an absolute phobia of spiders, it's safe to say I was not on board with this preacher or his sermon. Did this part give you the creeps, or you were okay? Let us know in the comments. Well, as we know, Willard does not marry Helen, but marries Charlotte instead, and unfortunately, a few years later, she's diagnosed with cancer. Now, we totally get that Willard is trying to teach their son Arvin the power of prayer in order to try to heal loved ones. But friends, the shocking part of it all was that he actually hits Arvin, forcing him to yell out his prayers and refusing to let Arvin cry, and actually has him sitting there on their makeshift pulpit for hours, way beyond sunset. And if that's not enough, as Willard is sitting at the local bar trying to drown his sorrows in what is clearly a downward spiral into madness, he realizes something. As he looks up at the deer head mounted on the wall, we thought, no freaking way is he actually gonna do it. But yes, he indeed believes that God needs a sacrifice in order to heal his wife, and we see Willard shoot the beloved family dog. Not just that, but he crucifies him in the same way he found Sergeant Jones years prior. This definitely made us gasp, but it's obviously a result of his post-traumatic stress disorder after the war, and we see Arvin's trauma also continue to grow as a young child. Speaking of trying to save one's wife, let's talk some more about Roy Lafferty. Okay, well, Helen is at the church to see whether or not she likes Willard, but in the process of Roy's sermon, she falls so hard for him due to his faith and conviction in God, and the two immediately connect and get married. Aw, that's kind of cute. Well, the two have an adorable baby girl named Lenora. Well, one day, after weeks of Roy stuffing himself in a closet in the name of God's will, he finally realizes his purpose and decides to go for a little drive with his wife and his brother. We're already a little weirded out, but then we find out that Helen's body was found buried 7 years later. But it's not until later in the movie, actually, that we find out why. Well, Roy has finally found his God-willed purpose, right? So he and Helen are sitting on a nice patch in the forest when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Roy stabs his wife in the neck with a screwdriver in one swift movement. Okay, we were like, what in the actual world? Well, we're super duper confused, but then in slow horror, it slowly dawns on us what Roy believes is his God-given power: resurrection. As Roy tries to bring Helen back from the dead, which of course doesn't work, he realizes the gravity of what he's done, and he and his brother bury the body and skip town. Yikes. Even more yikes, the murderous escapades of Carl and Sandy. They start out as a sweet enough couple, actually meeting each other the same day that Willard meets Charlotte. Tell us, how does one sit down to have a conversation with their spouse suggesting a plan to rape and murder innocent hitchhikers? We don't know the answer to that either. Well, it worked for these two. We find out initially when they try to force Roy to have sex with Sandy, which he refuses to do, and ends up getting shot in the head as a result of that. This already makes us wonder what else these two lunatics have up their sleeve. Well, later in the film, they pick up a young soldier who's the sweetest, most compassionate guy. Well, they take advantage of him, and once they've taken sexual pictures of him with Sandy, they castrate him, torture him, and eventually kill him. And then they move on to the next one. Yeah, the whole thing made us absolutely sick. So Arvin ends up an orphan, and so is Lenora at this point, and they both end up growing up in Emma Russell's home, since that's where Helen leaves Lenora when she goes on the drive. The family is super happy with each other, and finally there's some peace. Well, not for long. Around when they're teenagers, the new preacher comes to town. He is a skeezy predator, to say the least, preying on the young girls of the town, starting with Lenora. The minute we see the two of them alone in the car and the preacher's body language starts to shift, we went, oh no. Poor Lenora later on tries to tell him that she's pregnant, and he dismisses her and gaslights her, telling her she's insane. This leads to poor Lenora's death by hanging, which was actually an accident. In the heartbreaking moment, she changes her mind and wants to live, but accidentally tips the bucket over, which ends up killing her. And friends, the final moment that shocked us beyond belief was when Arvin exacts revenge and kills the preacher for being entirely complicit in Lenora's death and decides to leave town. Well, he's picked up by none other than Sandy and Carl. In the moment he realizes these two are going to try to kill him, he kills Carl first, then points his gun at Sandy, who also has her gun pointed at him. Within seconds, they both shoot, and yes, we gasped. But the shocking part of it all, Sandy's gun was loaded with blanks due to Carl's paranoia that Sandy would leave him or kill him. Poor woman never had a prayer. So there you have it. The creepiest, crawliest, shadiest, most horrific parts of the devil of all time. What was the most shocking moment for you? Leave us a comment below. As usual, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell as we bring you more juicy info, gossip, and speculation about the shows and stars you know and love. Until next time!